especially on the last point where you talk about permissionlessness,
Yes.
right? There are certainly echoes of that in the digital age, things like Bitcoin and whatnot. There's a great power in not needing to ask permission.
Absolutely. You can think of the Industrial Revolution as a permissionless society, at least when it came to economics.
Yes.
And that's why we had an industrial revolution, because people could innovate, they could create new things, they could build new businesses, they could merge, they could break up businesses, they could do all this stuff. No permission. And you could think of the world in which we live today as we're moving more and more and more into a permission-driven society. What are regulations, if not ways in which an authority comes in and said, you need my permission to braid hair. You need my permission. In California, it's a shampoo hair. You need a license. Right. What's a license? A license is permission from the government. So
permission slip, yeah.
And the only way you can have a permissionless society is if you believe that people have the capacity to reason for themselves.
Mm-hmm. So this is amazing. So it's the industrial. Well, I guess it's before that even, right? We talked about Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a known alchemist. Like there was sorry, there was, and this is again something I got from Peterson, but essentially there was a belief in the body of the church for some time that we didn't need to go and figure anything out. Christ was the final redemption. We were done. We just lived like this forever. But there was a group of people in the church that became known as the alchemists that said, no, we can go out and do experiments in nature and make things better, basically, which became kind of proto-scientific method, which became, I guess, the discovery of reason in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, reason was known going back to the Greeks. The Greeks are really the discoverers of reason, and Aristotle, of course, is the father of logic, and really the father of science and the father of empirical science. What happened in the 18th century is that they came to the understanding that reason could explain the world out there. So they came to understanding that Aristotle had already come to 2,000 years earlier. They finally caught up with Aristotle. Yeah. And then they said, this is the only means of reason, of knowledge. This is where we get stuff from. There is no other way to get information. It's not that there are revealed mechanisms of revelation. No, ultimately the way in which we learn about the world is through our senses and through through our understanding, through our mind, through our reasoning capacity, and that reason is connected to our observation about the world. And again, it's not just about contemplation in a dark room. Right. It is about going out there into the world and understanding nature and figuring it out and then reshaping nature to fit our needs. That is the great innovation of the 18th century. It made reason practical in a sense that it had not quite been identified as being in previous centuries. And the church had a lot to do with that, because the church basically said, truth is revealed. That's where truth comes from. It comes from the books. It comes from Jesus. It comes from reading the Bible. This is why they fought against the heliocentric. The Earth is the center of the universe. It says in a book, and they fought Galileo because of that. So, but no, our senses tell us that it's not that way. Our reason tells us that it's not, that the Earth goes around the sun. Oh, and once we accumulate more evidence that, we can do this, we can understand the world without reference to that book, well, the book kind of becomes irrelevant. It becomes less relevant. And now the world is about our ability to observe and understand.
Yes. Interesting. Okay. So your great point. We'd known about reason for a long time, but we had not respected reason in individuals widely. It was kind of an ivory tower type affair, I guess. And so another thing that jumps out here is there's that quote from, I forget who said it, but every sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So it's almost like we figured out that we could imprint our reason into the world as capital, basically, in the Industrial Revolution, and created this flywheel effect of wealth creation, right? So that we could.
I'm a finance guy, so I love capital. But if you think about the flywheel effect, it's what really drives the flywheel is not capital. What really drives the flywheel are ideas. What really drives
knowledge.
it is, if you will, ingenuity, right? But it's knowledge applied in a new way. So the real magic is what happens in here when we take the stuff that we know and we come up with a new idea, a new hypothesis, and then test it, and then figure out how to do something completely differently. So that's where the magic happened, and that's where this real acceleration happens. It's the freedom because of the permissionless society.
Yes.
Basically, the freedom says you can think any thought you want. There's no dogma anymore. Right. There's no dogma that says this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
If you can figure it out, if you can make it work, go for it. We're discovering new laws of physics. We're discovering new laws of biology. We discover evolution. We discover all these things. There's huge amounts to discover out there. Go use your mind to discover. And suddenly you unleash the minds of millions of people to come up with the ideas. And that's the flywheel effect. The flywheel effect is you build a steam engine. I then figure out how to make a steam engine even better than yours. Call it competition, but I make one and then you improve yours and I improve mine. And then somebody comes around and creates an electric motor that blows our steam engine out of the water, or a diesel motor, an internal combustion motor. And the steam engine is irrelevant now. But that idea begetting idea, the whole process of ingenuity and constantly refining and getting better at changing the world, changing nature, if you will, to suit our needs. That's the thing that drives progress. That's the things that makes that exponential graph possible.
I completely agree that it is, and I've written about this, it's all about ideas ultimately. Like information is almost the ultimate substrate, but there is this reciprocity, right? Where we imprint our reason into the world as capital. We've then afforded ourselves even more free time, right? We've caught more fish per man hour or whatever the thing is. We've invented candle light so we can read, into the nighttime, whatever it is. And that allows us to further exercise our reason to create even more sophisticated capital and production structures and create even more wealth. So there's this feedback loop between.
Absolutely. It's constant. And think about a big part of why it happened when it happened is that the fact that we had a printing press that was invented a few hundred years earlier, that now people could read, they could educate themselves. So again, more people having more ideas, interacting into this society. I always say, I hope, we have 8 billion people today. I hope we have 10 billion one day and 20 billion one day. Because the more people there are, the more thinkers there are, the more ideas there are, the more capital there is, the more progress you get, the more ingenuity you have, the more progress there is. And that's, it's people produce growth. And if you want more growth, you need more people.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, I think the number, I could be wrong about this, but I want to say it's a data throughput issue where we each have, I think it's 120 bits per second of conscious awareness. So if you start to multiply that out by number, we're effectively nodes on a network, to use the Bitcoin analogy. It's like the more people you have, the more nodes of ideas you have in this network called the global marketplace.
That's right. But if you're not free, and if you're not free, those nodes are meaningless, right? Because they can't do the stuff they need to do.
Exactly.
Or if they're badly educated, they're not maximizing the throughput.
Yeah.
Or, and this is where, I would disagree with Sam Harris, for example, if they don't choose, I believe in free will, if they don't choose to use their throughput, right? Then you don't get the benefit. So in order for me to have the best life that I possibly can, I need 8 billion people to be engaged with the world, using their reason, free to use it, and have the right morality, going back to our point about morality, so that they're motivated and incentivized to use it in order to improve their own lives. But by doing that, my life gets better, right? Because I'm on this network with all these 8 billion people. And if they're all flourishing, it's likely I'm going to be flourishing, and the possibilities that I have to flourish multiply dramatically. It's why I say it's selfish for me, in Ayn Rand's definition of selfish, to try to change the world. Because if the world becomes better, my life becomes better significantly.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So there's this theme then of discovery, right? It's almost like there was a dogma for some amount of time where people thought this was it. We're looking, the universe is finite, or everything's figured out. It's in this book, or it's in this authoritarian, whatever. But then all of a sudden that spectrum is completely opened up to infinity, essentially, because it's like, no, you can discover things by asking questions and experimenting.
Yep.
And this just unlocked human potential, I guess, that became reflected in the Industrial Revolution.
Absolutely. It's exactly it. It unlocked that potential. It's unlocked it in Europe. And then if you look at China over the last 40 years, think about China and think about all that locked potential, human potential under Mao Zedong, right? Nobody was allowed to do anything without permission.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they allowed some people to do some things permissionless, they started to create wealth.
Right.
And they started, and you get the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution in China on an accelerated basis, because they could build on all the knowledge that already existed in the West.
Right.
Just because they allowed for a little bit of freedom.
Right.
So imagine if we truly had 8 billion free people.
Right.